trails and ghost towns. Share the adventures of our early pioneers as we explore the development of the Pacific Northwest and beyond. With your host, Mike Roberts, and historian Bill Barlee.
Welcome to Gold Trails and Ghost Towns. I'm Mike Roberts. Bill Barlee, our raconteur, historian, storyteller, with us today. This guy, we've been talking a little bit about him before we've come on, absolutely amazes me. This guy has to be Superman of the West.
Well, you talk about a frontiersman, you talk about a trailbreaker. He was that. He was also a stern-wheeler captain. And of all the stern-wheeler captains in British Columbia and the Yukon, I don't think anybody really marks up to Billie Moore.
Captain Billie Moore.
Captain Billie Moore, called the Flying Dutchman, with very good reason, was all over British Columbia, followed virtually every gold rush in British Columbia and the Yukon, owned about 12 to 14 stern-wheelers, lost them all, made 3 fortunes, lost 2 3/4 fortunes. He was still going strong, Mike, in his 80s.
This guy is a Superman. The only way to describe him, Captain Billie Moore, and we'll begin our study of him as he emerges from his childhood. We'll do that right after this break. Ghost Towns. We're talking about Captain Billie Moore. So where did this phenom start?
Well, this guy was born in Hanover, which was a state in Germany at that time, 1822. British possession, actually, at that time. Shipped off for North America. Arrives in New Orleans.
How old? That's just a kid, or is
he's
he
about 24 when he gets
24?
to New Orleans. Marries his childhood sweetheart, Hendrika. And they stay in New Orleans. He goes into the American and Mexican War for a couple of years on board ship. Kind of falls in love with the nautical way of life. Comes back after the war is over and decides to go to California. 1851, the rush started there. 1849, he's a little late. He said, I'll never be late again. So he hangs around California a little while, decides to go to Peru, where there's a big gold rush there. Goes down to Peru, and this is about 1852, 1851 actually, and stayed in Peru for a little while, lots of revolutions, problems there. His wife begs him to go back to California. He goes back to California and picks up, he has 2 kids by this time, and he also has a whole bunch of goats. He had an affinity for goats. He really liked goats, and took them wherever he went, virtually wherever he went. 1852, he hears of a gold rush in what was British territories, British Columbia, and goes up the Queen Charlotte's and embarks with a number of other gold seekers, mostly from California. The Haida Indians gave them very short shrift, and they decided not to stay there. He goes back to California and stays in California for, some years, actually. And then he hears about a rush on the Fraser River, the year 1858. Decides to get on the ground floor of the rush. He heads for Victoria, which was the old Hudson's Bay Company post in Vancouver Island, and comes there with actually not very much money, but through dint of very hard work, he builds a barge. It's about 35 feet long, and he transports the goods back and forth between Victoria and the mouth of the Fraser River. Does very well.
Georgia Strait and up in the Fraser River.
Yeah, and goes up probably about as far as New Westminster. Yeah. Decides that there's more money to be made from New Westminster to the new gold diggings up past Hope into Old Fort Yale. Builds a new stern-wheeler 72 feet long. Decides he will go up into that area, and he lands in, and actually he does very, very well. This one was called the Henrietta, I believe, named after his daughter. And so he's the first stern-wheeler captain to get into that booming town of Yale. And Yale, at that particular time, 1859-60, is booming. 3,000 people are working in Hills Bar and Strawberry Island and all the bars all the way up the river. They welcome him with open hands. He gets a new nickname. They call him the Flying Dutchman, because he is able to navigate up from Hope right up to Yale past Emery Bar, which is very tough, and the Seven Sisters and all the rest of it. Tough bit of river to navigate, and he
He does.
He kind of likes that name, so he names a second ship. Now he's gone up to 91 feet, up from 72 feet up to 91, another 20 feet. This does happen.
A little bigger.
Does happen with people who own boats, any sort of vessel. So he christens this one, and this one, by the way, is after a kind of like a Mississippi sternwheeler, very similar to that. And when he launches that, it isn't as good a ship as he thought it would be, but he decides to keep on going. And the rush goes kind of over the top on that now. So he ships out to another rush he hears about, and this is the Leech River Rush on Vancouver Island. And he starts providing some transport to the Leech River Rush.
But that wouldn't be seaborne, because...
Yeah, that's seaborne.
He goes near Shawnigan Lake or something.
That's right, but he goes up by, and he transports in from the west side of the island. And he doesn't do very well there. Indeed, he doesn't do very well. So then he hears about a rush up in the northern part of British Columbia. Remember, this area in British Columbia in the late 1860s was virtually unmapped. This is called the Stikine. And he decides to go to the Stikine. He does go to the Stikine. Gets up there, finds the Stikine Indians do not welcome him with open arms. They call it a fireboat because of the noise it makes. He has a stern wheeler which draws only about 10 inches of water. So he can navigate the Stikine River, Mike, which is one of the most dangerous rivers in British Columbia, the most unpredictable river in British Columbia. It's changing all the time. There are deadheads, there are shoals, there are rocks. And my grandfather, remember, stated that of all the rivers he'd ever been on, the Stikine was the one, was the most unpredictable.
The thing that bugs me out, right, how does this guy keep building these sternwheelers? I mean, comes up from San Francisco, he builds a barge to go across Georgia Strait, builds two sternwheelers so he can go up the Fraser. I mean, is he made of money, or what's the deal?
Remember, he now has 7 children. He has 7 children, 5 boys, 2 girls. The boys are in the late teens, early 20s by now. So
this is his deckhands and crew.
Sure,
is this
so
right?
they work as hard as the old man, and he is a bear cat for work, absolute bear cat. He starts running on the Stikine River with this boat that literally skims over the top of the surface, and he does extremely well. He makes $20,000 that summer, and he makes it by charging exorbitant rates, $100 a ton for every ton that's shipped up the river, going up towards Telegraph Creek and Buck's Bar, found by old Buck Choquette, who was an old prospector up there, and $20 a man, without food and without any... They just stayed out on the deck. They sat on the deck, and that's where they slept.
I mean, that was the price of admission. He had the only boat on the river,
that's
and
right.
If you wanted to get there smooth and easy, that was the price of it.
He was the only show in town. He makes $20,000. When you equate that to today, that's about 40 times as much. So $800,000 he cleans up in one summer.
Oh.
And what he does then, of course, he's got a fortune. He goes back and builds another boat. Then he goes back onto the Fraser and challenges Captain John Irving, who was one of the great sternwheeler captains of the Fraser River. No doubt about it. One of the great sternwheeler families of British Columbia. And they drive the rates down on the Fraser River, so it's about 25 cents a fare. Well, that's ridiculous. Here he's getting $20 a fare going up on the Stikine River, and now he's down to 25 cents a fare. And the result, of course, is that our friend starts going bankrupt. And he starts going bankrupt in a big way, because he can't resist a rate war. He's got to survive. Well, Irving is probably a better businessman than Billie Moore, and undoubtedly he was, because he survived, Billie Moore did not. And the result is, he goes broke, and they're going to seize his ship. He owes $17,000. Now, he'd made $20,000 in the Stikine. He now owes $17,000, and he's built the boat. The boat has cost him about $50,000, Mike. He decides to head for the United States. He heads down.
Just skipping out, is he?
Sure, yeah.
Getting away from his predators.
Yes, indeed he did. So he heads for the United States. They trace him to the United States, and a marshal steps on board and says, "We're going to arrest you." He said, "Well, let me take a look at the boat." And they get the boat underway, and the marshal can't jump off. So they bring him back across the line, where the marshal has no jurisdiction at all. And Billy is very proud of himself. He lands in Old Victoria, but guess who's waiting there?
Yeah, his creditors.
That's right. His creditors are waiting there. They grab the boat, they grab Billy, they put it up for sale. The $50,000 boat sells for $8,000. Billy Moore is declared bankrupt in a court in Victoria.
How old is he now? This is 18...
Well, this is 1860s, so he is now in his 40s.
His 40s.
He's bankrupt the first time.
Okay, that's his first fortune. Now, what's his next gambit? What does he do to get back on his feet here?
Well, what he does, he looks around for another gold rush, and sure enough, another gold rush crops up on the horizon. Well, he can't, you know, his ears perk up and says, my heavens, there's a gold rush up in the Big Bend country. I better get up there. He has no money, but he has lots of manpower. All his kids are willing to work for him. Sure, all his kids are willing to work for him. He scrapes a few dollars, goes up to the Kamloops area, builds himself a barge, makes a few trips up the Thompson and right into that Seymour Arm country up there in Shuswap Lake, and finds that the rush is not going to last. He doesn't make much money. Ties the barge up, picks up his wife, picks up his kids, picks up his goats, and heads for the Caribou. The Caribou at the 1865, 66, 67 is still booming. We had, you know, names like Billy Barker and Caribou Cameron, and all the great gold kings were coming streaming out of the Caribou. Billy doesn't get a good claim. He works in the mines for a while. His sons work all over the place with ranchers and so on.
Oh, so he's not barging now. He's working in the mines.
No, he isn't, but he's looking for another opportunity. Finally, in early 1870, the opportunity comes. He hears of another rush in the Amanika district. In the Amanika district, 1870, 1871, was booming with gold, and placer gold, of course. He teams up with a guy called Elsmore, who's a businessman in that Quesnel area. And Elsmore wants to establish a store up there. They go up to that district, and they establish a store, mostly under Elsmore, because what happens is they barged up with the kids working like dogs and the old man working just as hard or harder. They get up to the Amanika district. They establish the store, and Elsmore is so greedy, they call him Old Hoggum. They said, heck, that's not good enough. And the town goes up around his store. They call the town Hoggum. So he's Old Hoggum, and the town is Hoggum. And Moore decides he's done the best he can there. He starts to head overland, and he heads overland into the Skeena River district. Now he's back on the coast. Skeena, one major river down from the Stickeen, and he starts freighting in there with a barge and with a boat.
And now this guy is now 50.
He'd be 50 now. Now he's getting on, but going concern. This guy's a dynamo, and they have all sorts of trouble with the Indians in Kitsilas Canyon and around Kitsigukla village, and they call them the Stick Indians. Well, these are the Indians around the Skeena River district, Tlingit mostly, and they were very, very truculent. They didn't think that anyone should pass in Kitsilas Canyon, and Moore had to, shots were exchanged because they were lined up on the shore, and Moore was bringing his crafts up the center of the canyon, lining most of the way, so he had to break out, I think it was 2 boxes of guns, trade guns, and give them to his crew with all the ammunition. His crew were Coast Indians, and there was not any feeling of great affinity between the Coast Indians and the Indians in Kitsilas Canyon.
Maybe a gun like this.
Oh, it'd be very similar to that. The Indians would have used a gun like that.
Yeah?
They would have been firing with a musket ball and percussion cap, this type of gun, because that's an 1863.
And the bore of this thing is like 50 caliber.
Yeah. In fact, some of the shots, Mike, hit within 6 inches of Moore. And finally, he buys them off temporarily with $200 worth of Hudson's Bay blankets, and the British Columbia government sent a gunboat up to intervene in this nascent war, and they pay the Indians $600 so Moore can pass through. So there he is. He's back on the coast again. He's on the Skeena, and he's really back in shipping again.
Shipping again. But you told me he's lost 2 fortunes and 3/4 of another. We'll find out about the 3rd fortune when we come back from this break. Don't go away. Captain Billie Moore today. We've already followed him across the Georgia Strait and up the Fraser. We followed him up the Thompson. We followed him on the Skeena. We followed him on the Stickeen. We followed him to Mexico. This guy's all over the plot. Where is he going now at the age of 50-something?
Yeah, just about 50 years old now. Now, and he hears of a rush now, again on the Stickeen, but it's called the Cassiar, a little farther up, one of those creeks leading into the Stickeen, actually off Dease Lake. So he and his sons head there, and they get up there, and they get onto Thibert Creek. One of the French-Canadian prospectors discovered a very, very rich gold creek, and it's late in the fall, and they decide to do a little panning. It's good color, but they don't like it. It's mostly staked. So the kids, Billy and Johnny, 2 of his sons, said, we passed a creek about 12, 15 miles up the lake, and we think there's nobody there. So they go back and prospect that. They get up about 2 or 3 miles. They hit coarse gold, Mike.
Is this some of the gold from this neck of the woods?
That's the type of gold they were hitting. That's about half a pound there. They get about They get about half a pound a day, every day. So they get that much every day, and it's $15 an ounce. They're making super good wages. And they stake this creek. Instead of calling it Moore Creek, which they should have, they call it Dease Creek after Dease Lake. And they come back the next spring. They have discovery claims. They take out between 3,000 and 4,000 ounces, about $50,000 in gold there.
So Captain Billie Moore doesn't make all his fortunes on riverboating. He makes some of it right out of the creek.
He makes one of his major fortunes out of this creek. There are 3 major creeks there. There's Thibert Creek, there's Dease Creek, and there's McBain Creek, that trinity of creeks. He goes back then to fight another war, builds another sternwheeler, wants to fight another rate war, of course, with our old friend Captain John Irving. Shows up on the Fraser River, starts losing his money, dissipates his fortune, and eventually they seize that ship too. And he's declared bankrupt again.
A second time.
Yeah, but this takes probably over a period of about 10 years. So the second bankruptcy is about 1882. So between 1882 and about 87, his sons wrote. Billy is in the far north, and his other sons are sternwheeling here and there, and they send him back. They're a family that writes letters all the time. He gets a letter in 1887. He's down on his luck. He is now 55 years old. 1887, no, he isn't. He's 65 years old, isn't he? Yeah, he's 65 years old, born in 1822. So he's now an old age pensioner. And his son Billy says, I think there's some little discoveries up here in the Yukon district. They call it the Klondike. He said, and I think that they're going to make a big discovery up here. Well, it doesn't take any more urging. The old man is on his way. Leaves Hendrika behind in Victoria and travels up coast, catches another sternwheeler, which much have galled him, and lands up coast, starts running the mail for the Canadian government. And he runs...
At 65 years of age, he's running the mail.
Yeah,
what is he on a
started.
Sternwheeler or what? How is he running this mail?
Eventually he starts running overland. He's in his 70s by the time he starts running overland.
He's hiking the mail?
Yeah, but what happened in the sojourn up there is very, very interesting, Mike. He runs across a Canadian surveyor, a guy called Ogilvie, William Ogilvie, whom I think was very, very dedicated civil servant indeed. And they're out in this country. The Klondike rush has not occurred.
That's 98, right?
The 96, actually. The first strike, major strike, was made in 96.
So here he is in 1890
Yeah,
sometime.
here's in 1888, 1889, 1890. And he's up there, and he runs across an Indian. And the Indian is Skookum Jim. And this is one of the Indians who eventually discovered part of the Klondike rush. Skookum Jim, Tagish Charlie, and George Carmax, as well as Henderson, Robert Henderson, the Canadian. And anyway... He wants to get a route into that country. He doesn't know there's any gold up there, but he thinks there's going to be gold there. There's Chilkoot Pass is one of the routes. And anyway, Skookum Jim comes down and said there's another route. And Skookum Jim takes him over the White Pass, which they named after Canadian civil servant, Minister of the Interior, actually. So they call it White Pass. And this is the route he thinks is going to be taking him right into the Klondike. And so what happens is this. He establishes this route, carries the mail, 1,200 miles for $600. He's 75 years old, but in the 75th year when he's carrying this mail. But he also is working on a natural bay down there, Skagway Bay. He thinks this is going to be the natural entrance into the Yukon district when the big gold is discovered up there. He preempts 160 acres there, and he begins to build a huge, massive dock, hundreds of feet out into that bay. So he can accommodate ocean-going ships that are coming in and are going to land the Prospect.
And this is in the
early
1890s.
1890, yeah, about 6 years before the rush takes place.
There are no big ocean boats there.
There's nobody else there. There's only Billie Moore, Hendrika, his wife, his kids occasionally, and the goats. And one house, and a huge, long dock that nobody lands at because there are no boats coming in. What happens in 1896, electrifying strike goes around the world. People start coming in 1896. Billy is sitting there waiting for them. They continue to come in ever-increasing numbers in 1897. In 1898, remember, over 100,000 people came into this. He is sitting there waiting for them. Skagway becomes a city.
And it's his city.
It's mostly his city, 160 acres. But the people who come in don't consider this old man that has any power at all. They survey right over his house, right over his lots, and they're going to drive him out. A bunch of young toughs come up. He's now about very close to, he's about 78 years old. They come up, and they're going to throw him out. They ain't going to throw him out. He grabs a crowbar, and he wards them off with a crowbar. And, of course, long and very expensive litigation results. And while this litigation is going on, Billie Moore hears of another rush. 1900, Nome, Alaska. Heads to Nome, takes $10,000 with him, stakes his own claim, thinks he's got the magic touch or the golden touch, and he hasn't. He loses the $10,000, comes back to Skagway, builds a house for his wife, his long-suffering wife, and on the house he builds a pilot house so he can look out in Skagway Bay and pretend he's the king of Skagway. Now, of course, Soapy Smith was the king of Skagway, but he thought he was the king of Skagway. He stays there for a while, finally realizing that his stern-wheeler days, essentially, Mike, are probably over. He's over 80 right now, and it's 1902, 1903. He's dissipated most of 3 fortunes, but the court case, he gets about $20,000 back. That's equivalent now to about $800,000. He then moves back to the town he had always loved, and the town he had always loved, of course, is Victoria. So he comes back to Victoria, and he settles down with his family in Victoria and lives a rather genteel life until his death in his 88th year in 1909.
Now, for me to contemplate a person who could just survive the times, survive the privations, the horrible river conditions, for him to be able to do that, plus his wife and kids, and constantly and finally be able to presume to see into the future and actually pull it off, this guy is spectacular.
What amazes me even more than all of that, trekking through the snows and uncharted wilderness for 1,200 miles for $600 in the dead of winter. And there's a great photograph in this book here, Mike, which is just great.
This is your suggestion. If you wanted to find out more about Billie Moore, Captain William Moore, BC's Amazing Frontiersman by Norman Hacking.
By Norman Hacking. Very good book. He's done a lot of good research on it, and you see a picture of Billie Moore in there, and there he is covered with hoarfrost, and he is out on the trail, and they just got him just as he's going out or just as he's coming back, and you know, this guy's well into his 70s. He was out to make another fortune well into his 70s, and did do so.
And did do so.
Yeah.
Well, is there any place? Is there a town called Moore? Is there a Point Moore, Moore Bay, Moore Island?
You know, as far as I know, there's nothing to commemorate him. I want to take a picture of his gravestone if it's in the Victoria Cemetery, and I haven't checked with vital statistics yet, and it probably is there, because I think this guy should be commemorated. He's one of the great pioneers of British Columbia, considered himself both an American citizen and a British Columbia citizen, by the way, but was buried in Victoria.
All right. Captain Billie Moore, the Flying Dutchman, may have had 14 boats under him at through the period of his life, and pursued every gold rush that was in California and British Columbia and into the Yukon, and a really amazing story. Thank you very much, Bill.
You're welcome.
We'll be back next time with Gold Trails and Ghost Towns with more phenomenal characters.